I'm going to show you the real reasons that your ROAS may go down whenever you scale. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing you have to understand before we even explain why this happens is what your ROAS really is. And you may say, well, that's the return on ad spend that I get. For every dollar I put in, the ROAS that it shows on Facebook is exactly what I get out. Now that's not necessarily true. So your ROAS is not the end-all be-all. Now, yes, does it look nice if you look in the platform and you see a 4x, 5x ROAS or whatever it may be? Yeah, sure, it looks nice. Now, what you have to understand about this is it is a ratio, essentially, based on we're going to abbreviate this, statistical modeling. So what does that mean? That means that your ROAS is not the actual amount of dollars that you get back every time you put money in. So the first problem here is this is essentially what statistical modeling is an educated guess. So they're taking the pixel data and the conversion API data and trying to match where the purchases came from, and sometimes that's not going to be correct, right? It's typical to see that it's not going to be 100%. So that's the first problem. The second problem is you have a 7-day attribution window, right? So what does that mean? Is it true that every single purchase that comes from an ad happens within 7 days of them seeing the ad? No. And in fact, on a brand that I am running ads for right now, we have a post-purchase survey. And in that survey, we asked, how long did you hear about us before you decided to make a purchase? Now, the first thing we asked is, where did you first hear about us? Now, it was overwhelmingly from Facebook for this brand. Now, why would that be from Facebook? Well, because they're running ads, on Facebook, right? And so that's probably contributing to why that is. But the second part, we had several different options. And the first option was, did you hear about us for less than a day? Very few people said that. The second was within a week. Some more people said that, but not that many, right? The majority of the people, from when I last checked this, said that they had heard about this brand for less than a month or 1 to 3 months before they made a purchase. And most of them heard about the brand from Facebook. So what does that tell you? The sales process and the sales cycle does not happen in some cases, or many cases really, within a 7-day window. So this metric right here, ROAS, doesn't really mean jack crap at the end of the day. It can be nice to look at. It can be nice to see when an ad gets a high ROAS. Sure, it's nice to look at, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the ad that's scaling the account, because the sales process is oftentimes not within a 7-day window within the attribution, and this attribution period is based on statistical modeling. So what's more concrete? A better way to look at this, first off, is to not look so much at ROAS, but rather you can look at the platform CPA to get an idea of how things are doing, but also the blended in CPA. Now, another one you can look at is MER, Marketing Efficiency Ratio. Now, sometimes people like to look at this as a ratio. Some people look at it as a percentage. So if you see a 3-to-1 MER, that means, for example, if you spend $1 on ads, for every dollar you spend, you're essentially getting $3 back, right? That's a 3-to-1 MER. Now, I like to look at MER as a percentage. So for example, you got a 35% MER. That would mean essentially your ads are 35%. It's the same as essentially a ratio. This would be very similar to a 3-to-1 MER, just slightly higher. But say you got a 35% MER, the ads essentially are 35% of the sales that you're getting. 35% of that money is being spent on ads, if that makes sense. So anyways, I like to look at it as a percentage rather than the actual ratio of, say, a 3-to-1, for example. Now, blended CPA is good because, blended CPA is good because this shows you the blended results. Now, as we know, especially with Facebook or Meta, if you're running broad targeting, right, and you're using 7-day attribution, You know, 7-day click, 1-day view attribution is typically the standard that a lot of people are using. You can do some other stuff where you change the attribution window, but typically the purchases that you're seeing are going to happen within a 7-day or a 1-day window. We know that not all purchases that happen are within that window. So the ROAS isn't going to tell you much. Now, what is going to happen here if you say, for example, increase your spend? So this ROAS right here is going to be like this, most likely. So up here, you're spending 10 bucks a day, right? So we're going to put 10 per day. Here, we're going to put 100 per day. And then here, 1K per day. And then here, we'll put like 10K. So this is when you start spending a lot more money. So if you're spending 10K a day, that's a pretty good amount of money, right? But let's say, for example, you're spending 10 bucks a day. Your ROAS is up here. Now here, this is going to represent your fixed costs. So you got, let's say, for example, several salaries. You got some contractor expenses. Maybe you're working with like an email agency or whatever the case is, right? And so this line right here represents your fixed costs, right? And so anytime you are above this line, up here, this may be not the greatest way to kind of visually show this, but hopefully you'll get the point. This represents your fixed cost. If you were in this area, you're actually losing money. So it doesn't matter if you were at $10 a day and you're getting let's say a 9x ROAS. Oh my gosh, you're spending $10 to make 90, but you're losing money. Your ROAS is great, but you're still losing money because it's not enough to cover the fixed expenses. So what happens when you go to 100? Let's say your ROAS goes down to 5. Let's say you're still getting a 5x ROAS. Oh my gosh, that's so good. It's still good. Not as great as the 9x. You're losing less money still. If you can see this and kind of understand where I'm going with this, you're still losing less money because of these fixed expenses. So you're making less, your ads are less efficient, but you're losing less money. Now, what about if you go to 1K a day? So let's say we go from a 5x ROAS, we 10x our budget. And so now we drop to let's just say a 2.5, right? So let's say your ROAS goes to a 2.5 ROAS. So now you're somewhere in here. So now you're actually making a little bit of money, even though you have the worst ROAS you've ever had. You see that? And so this is the first part of this, is you got to understand that ROAS does not equal cash flow. ROAS does not equal money in the bank. It is a ratio, and the amount you are willing to spend to get a customer should not be the same regardless of whether you're spending 10 bucks a day or 10,000. Because at a higher volume of sales, you're also going to get more repeat customers, right? So you're going to grow the business faster. You're going to overcome those fixed overhead expenses faster. Now let's do something crazy here. Let's say you go from 1K to 10K a day and your ROAS goes down to a 1.7. Now, we're just going to assume you have a pretty low cost of goods. This is just a hypothetical example to kind of make the point here. Now, here, your ROAS just went way down. Oh my gosh. But because your volume of sales increased, you are actually making more money at a lower ROAS and a lower efficiency. You see that? And so the ROAS itself is not the end all be all, because the ROAS does not equal cash flow. ROAS does not equal overcoming your fixed expenses. You have to know, what are my fixed expenses? And you have to actually map this out to know where you realistically should be and what your target should actually be based on your expenses, based on your cost of goods, and based on everything else that goes into it. Now, a simple way I like to look at this is looking at blended NCPA. I think that's better than looking at ROAS, because then you are looking at the blended metrics. So you can use something like Triple Whale, for example. There's a link below if you want to check it out. If not, cool. There's plenty of different ways you can go about calculating it. But you can use something like Triple Whale that can show you, basically what your MER is or your blended NCPA, so you can get an idea of where you're at in a easy to use way. I like the dashboard for Triple Whale. I think it's very easy to use. So if you want to check it out, cool. If not, there's other ways you can do it. But I like NCPA better because this is not based off of the platform attribution. You can't go in the platform and see the NCPA with any of the standard attribution models. Now, there is some stuff coming out with like incremental attribution and all this, but still, you can't really get the full picture with your NCPA by just looking in the platform, right? And so you can use a tool like Triple Whale. There's other ways to find this, but you can use something like Triple Whale, for example, to find your NCPA. And so you may know, for example, because you've done the math, maybe you have a fractional CFO who's kind of ran the numbers for you. And so you may know that on every order, your AOV is, let's say $70, right? $70. So it's kind of on the lower end, but not terrible. It could be better. You really want to be shooting for that $75+ range, $75, $80+ range if possible. Let's just say hypothetically your AOV is $70. Now let's say your cost of goods, shipping and everything included, with shipping included and everything included, let's say it is $15, right? So that leaves you with, what is that? $55 in theory that you could spend to get a new customer. So if you're selling, you say you have a one product store, you just have this one product. You could spend $40 in CPA, and essentially you're going to be making, just based on the rough math, there may be some other transaction fees and returns and stuff that you still have to account for. So keep that in mind. There may be some other stuff as well, but you could essentially spend $40 and you're going to still be making profit on the first sale. Now, some people, depending on the product, they may get really aggressive and they may say, hey, I'm fine to lose money on that first sale because I know those customers are going to come back. I know my email marketing is dialed in. I know I'm scheduling out drops every month, right? I'm doing all these things to get the customers to come back. I'm releasing new products. So I'm willing to actually lose money on that first sale. Now, why would they say that? The only reason they would really say that is not because they want to lose money. It's because they understand how business works and they understand how the numbers actually work. They know that if they spend more money, what's going to happen? Their ROAS, here it is again. So this is going to represent your ROAS. Here's their ROAS at $10 a day. Now, as they spend money, it's going to start to kind of go down a little bit, right? Now, it's not going to go down in, proportionally. Typically, that's not going to happen. It's not going to go down where, say, for example, you go from $10 a day to 20, and your ROAS is just going to cut in half, right? It's not really how it works. But it may go down some as you spend more money because you're reaching a larger audience of people who are going to be less and less probable to convert, essentially. So, in this example, you got a $40 new customer acquisition cost where you're spending $40. Now, let's say you have $5 in extra fees or whatever the case is. You're still making money before your fixed expenses on that first order. So, in theory, your ROAS looks fine, right? Now, what the small business owners often miss here is they see that $40 CPA and they think, oh my gosh, my ROAS is terrible. My efficiency of my marketing is terrible. I need to cut back on spend. I need to pull back. That's my gut reaction, is to pull back because they don't understand the numbers. And so when they don't understand the numbers, once again, go back to that graph that I made. Maybe not the best example visually, but go back to the graph that I made. What happens in that case when they pull back the spend and their ROAS goes up? They make less money because they don't understand the numbers and how to actually overcome those fixed expenses.